All right, we're going to take a look at chapter 6, which is all about language. And language, I've always been fascinated with language. I grew up in a house with books everywhere, and I loved to read. And as a child and an adolescent, I wrote a lot of poetry. I'm smiling as I say this because some of it was really bad poetry, but the reading and the writing, I don't know if they caused me to love language or if my love of language propelled me towards reading and writing. I'm not sure, but I find this chapter fascinating. For me, it's like coming home. This is information I really enjoy. Okay, so let's before we jump into this. This is something from the textbook, and I find it extremely hard to do. When you look at this page, what you're supposed to do is say the color, not the word. So this first row, you would say, oh crap, it's always hard for me. Green, red, blue. I mean, I could say yellow, blue, orange, black, red, green. That's easy. But to say the color and not the word is extremely difficult. This is called the Stroop effect. And it tells us how the language that we use influences perceptions, right? Because humans make sense of the world through the filter of language. So I would like you, if you didn't do it when you were reading the book, I want you to pause and do it now. Say the color but not the word and see how challenging that is for you. All right, so we're going to look at the first section right now, which is an overview. It's the nature of language. And it's going to explain in this chapter that language is symbolic, it's rule-based, or as the textbook says, rule-governed. It is subjective, and it is culture-bound. So while this is all, this section is very important. All right, I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay. So words are arbitrary. They don't have a meaning in and of themselves, and people's minds explode at this point. And we say, well, what do you mean that words don't have meanings? Well, the idea is that we as human beings give them meanings. So, for example, if you are a speaker of English, the number, I should have written it in numeric form. We say 5. French people say 5. Okay, let's see. Computers, it's 0101. In American Sign Language, it's the hand with the fingers outspread. And as I found out, it's the palm facing the person who's signing, the back of the hand facing the person. But if you were going to do 51, that first, the 5 would be turned around. That's just fascinating. Okay, so because language seems to us to be very clear-cut and definite, we sometimes have a problem understanding that language is actually symbolic. What do they say in the book? There's nothing particularly 5-like in the number 5. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Language is symbolic. Okay, moving on. Language is rule-governed or rule-bound. I'm not going to expect you to have a totally deep understanding of these. I mean, these were 4 separate classes that I took to look at this. Phonology or phonological rules govern how sounds are combined. So we spend time talking about, for example, the m sound. It's a bilabial because it uses the 2 lips. M. We talk about where the sound is produced, and the different languages have a hard time with different sounds. Like English speakers, the sound that's represented by the letters th can either be the, or th. So one is voiced, the, and the other one is voiceless, th. Okay. My grandfather could not make the th sound. My sisters name is Catherine or Kathy, and he always called her Kathy. Okay. Syntactic rules. Syntax has to do pretty much with how a sentence is constructed. In English, we tend to do subject, verb, object. I put the book on the table. When Yoda has a way, his syntax does not match up with English syntax. What is it? Into the dark you go, or go you. I don't even know because I haven't watched Star Wars in a long time. Okay, and different languages, speakers of different languages, there are different syntactic rules that can kind of mess us up. Semantic rules govern the meaning of a statement. So these are the ones that, when you look up words in a dictionary, you find out the semantics of the language. But I like this one. Let's get together tomorrow, one person says to another. Okay, so we look it up and we say, oh, okay, we could see what each of these words means on its own. But when we put it together, let's get together tomorrow can be an invitation. I hope we can get together. It can be a command, or it can even be what we say when we don't really want to get together. And that gets into the issue of pragmatics that tell us what uses and interpretations of a message are appropriate in a given context. So one of the things that people who are learning a language find that it's relatively easy to learn the phonology, the syntax, and the semantics. The pragmatics, in a sense, you have to learn by being in that culture. I like to use the example of if, let's say we're having a party and you're all at least 21. Okay. And you when you come in and I say, oh, welcome, would you like a drink? Or I say to you, welcome, would you like something to drink? On the surface, those seem very similar, but they mean something different. So would you like something to drink can range from water to lemonade to maybe a beer. But if I say, would you like a drink? I'm actually offering you something alcoholic. So that's something you have to learn when you're in that situation. Okay. Language is subjective. Ooh, okay. It's similar to the idea that language is symbolic. The meanings are in people, not words. And the problem is that people attach different meanings to these same words. So we're gonna talk about this a little bit when we get to the latter. I just went blank on what it's called. I feel like I didn't have enough coffee today. The abstraction ladder. We can get to that, but what's a good example that I can use for you here? When the textbook, I remember getting into a little bit of a little argument with someone over Facebook, and it really was on the meaning of the word feminism or feminist. What does it mean to be a feminist? And it seems to me that the new definition that a lot of people believe is if someone is a feminist, it means they really despise men. That's not how I think of that word. Okay, and so we get to, I should have capitalized that, we get to two ways of looking at words. One is the denotation, which is when we look it up in the dictionary, that's the definition. The connotation is a little bit more of the sentiment behind it, how we feel about the words. Let's say you've been working hard at losing weight, and you go see, you had a family reunion and people are telling you how you look, and they can tell you, instead of saying you look great, they say, oh, you're so thin, you're slender, you're skinny, you're scrawny, you're bony, you're svelte. Which are the words that would make you feel good? Because if you look them up in the dictionary, the denotation is all pretty much the same. The connotation can be very different. So sometimes what happens is when you say something, you mean it a certain way, but the person who's hearing it doesn't take it the same way. If you think back to chapter 1 where we had the two communicators, the Stewie Griffin model there with the overlapping environment. So you might not share the same environment, so to speak, is where the meaning of these words come into play. All right. For me, I think the most fascinating part of this chapter is this part, language and worldview. There is a concept that is called linguistic relativity, and that idea is that language both reflects the worldview of those people who use the language, and it shapes the worldview of those who use it. The classic example was always the, we don't say Eskimos anymore, the Aleutian natives have 150 different words for snow. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly true. Well, why? Because it snows a lot there, and so they differentiate all the different kinds of snow. Now, I have to say, when I was in grad school, this idea was being, it was laughed at. It was derided. People said, oh, this is not true at all. So when I started teaching this class, it was, and this idea had come back into favor, it was really hard for me to see that it was actually true. Okay. But just so you know, this is called I pronounce it Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Other people call it Sapper. It just doesn't sound right. Sapir-Whorf. Okay. Based on two people, Benjamin Whorf was an amateur linguist, and Edward Sapir, or Sapper, was an anthropologist. And so Whorf took Sapir's ideas and created this idea of, and helped to create the idea of linguistic relativity. So it is saying that, the words we use, turn off the ringer there, the words we use impact how we see the world. And because we might be communicating with people who have a different language, the way they see the world is going to be different. So, well, what does this mean for us? Well, let's talk about that when we get to class. But I think for me to really understand this, the best thing to do is to watch some videos where people explain it in a little more depth. There are two videos that have to do with language and money. One is shorter. One is longer because it's a TED Talk. And I think the short one is about 6 minutes, and the TED Talk is maybe about 14 minutes. They're both very good. So, and then there's a video that Mayim Bialik did about the words girl versus woman. Okay. So just please take time to watch these videos, just to get an idea of what's going on in terms of this. And I would really like to talk about this idea of linguistic relativity and how it impacts our communication with other people. So before we move on to the next section, I want you to pause and see if you can explain. Do you understand how language is symbolic? Do you understand how it is rule-based or rule-governed, if you like that word? Do you understand how language is culture-bound, impacted by the culture? And do you understand how it is subjective? Can you use examples of all of these? If you can't, this would be a good idea to bring up in class and to let me know when you fill out the survey that this is an area that you are not sure that you understand. All right, so that is section 1. And